Let's see how a simple hierarchy works in practice. I'll make a robot with two parts to its arm, a forearm and an upper arm. This is kind of a classic computer graphics example, except that my robot is going to be a T850. The forearm is this piece, made of 6 objects. I run some tests on it and it looks good. I've made it so that the point where I'll attach it to the upper arm is at the origin. I do this because I know that when a rotation is applied, the rotation happens with respect to the point at the origin. Here's the code to create my forearm. There's not a lot to it. I create an object 3D, I call createRobotExtender, and then I add the forearm to the scene so I can see it. My createRobotExtender function adds a bunch of geometric objects to the forearm object. FA length is passed in to let this function know how tall to make the extender. It doesn't really matter what I add to the forearm object. The only rule is that whatever I put into this object, I need to remember that this object will itself rotate around the origin. I designed my upper arm in the same way and code it up about the same. Again, it rotates around the origin. The bit we're interested in is how these two objects get hooked together so that the forearm is the child of the upper arm. Here's the code that attaches the two objects together. We make the two arm pieces the same as before. The key difference is that instead of adding the forearm to the scene itself, we add the forearm to the upper arm. We also move the forearm to be at the top of the upper arm. At this point, the upper arm can be moved around, rotated, scaled, and all of its parts will be transformed in the same way. This is why I renamed this object to be the arm instead of the upper arm, since in fact it holds both the upper arm and the forearm. For example, if we set a rotation on the arm, the whole object will rotate. What's important to realize here is that the arm doesn't particularly know or care what's inside any of its children. When I add the forearm to the forearm becomes just another part of the arm, no different than adding a simple sphere or a block. However, since we can manipulate any object by changing its transforms, we can also change the position of the forearm itself. So changing the angle with this line of code will change the angle of the forearm without affecting anything else. The transform order is the forearm's rotation and translation, followed by the arm's rotation and translation. This means the forearm can be transformed however you wish without knowing about the arm as a whole. The arm's transforms are applied later. Give the demo a try to see how the two parts interact with their separate controls.